Developed by Combat Waffle Studios, Ghosts of Tabor is a blend of FPS action, PvP challenges, and PvE survival elements with potential. If you're a fan of the intense experiences found in games like Escape from Tarkov and DayZ, you've got something to look forward to. We'll approach this review by evaluating 6 different aspects of this title, being theme, mechanics, player agency, motion aids, visual quality, and audio quality. These categories are the same as previous videos, just renamed for clarity. At the end, we'll review the whole package to see if this early access title is more than just the sum of its parts. Without further delay, let's hop right into it, starting off with the theme. The overarching story here is that you belong to one of 3 factions fighting for territorial control in the year 2042. Without going into too much detail, you have the Volk, Ghosts, and Phoenix factions. The Volk saved Russia's people from its own government and took over. The Ghosts are ex-special forces from around the world working for NATO, and the Phoenix are residents of Tabor, essentially caught in the middle of a power struggle between these two. The story itself, at this point, is just a backdrop for the game, something to help the game's setting and environment make sense. The theme gets an early access score of 3 out of 6. I would have liked to see more presence from the factions or some storytelling elements in the map themselves. At least at the moment, the narrative serves more as a context for the conflict rather than driving gameplay changes. But for a survival looter shooter, that's not a bad thing. With that said, this game does have potential when it comes to mechanics, but struggles with bugs and inconsistencies. This is expected though, given the game is in early access. The controls are about as complicated as controls in similar gun-focused VR titles. An unexpected but impressive feature was the ability to quickly reload by taking a magazine out of a gun while holding another. It added a layer of unexpected realism, which is always a good touch. Otherwise, both small and large weapons seem to follow the same physics when held with one hand. This is pretty common and wasn't too immersion breaking until I realized I can fire a 50 cal one-handed like a Glock. On that note, there was a lack of an obvious mechanism to stabilize sniper rifles, making precise aiming difficult. The inventory management system, on the other hand, is very nice. Inventory has relatively the same intuitive and strategic design as another game we've reviewed on this channel. I'm a fan of being able to organize backpacks like this, so yeah, an enjoyable layer of immersion there. One huge downside was how rushed you feel during the tutorial. They go over a lot of information and move so fast doing so, it's hard to get comfortable with the controls while following the tutorial. I couldn't get back into the tutorial either. I'm not sure if it's accessible through the menu, but I had a hard time using that, so mechanics gets an early access score of 2 out of 6. I was expecting more survival elements here aside from the typical trying not to get shot. There's a lot of potential buried under these bugs, so I'm optimistic about the future. Another aspect I'm optimistic about is player agency. Let's start with the positives. When it comes to weaponry and equipment, the game is clearly moving in the right direction. Players have a significant degree of freedom in choosing and customizing their arsenal, allowing for a tailored combat experience. Unfortunately for player agency, that's about where the positives end. While you have a ton of choices in guns and gear, the same can't be said for the environmental interaction here. The game world feels somewhat static, limiting how players can interact with their surroundings. This limitation is noticeable, and something as simple as a door you can interact with or open could go a long way. Despite these drawbacks, the game's player versus environment approach deserves praise. It adds an element of unpredictability and freshness here. You're never quite sure what to expect, whether it's a challenge from another player or an NPC. This category gets a 3 out of 6. The lack of environmental interaction is somewhat balanced out by the advanced degree of gear customization, but the game is moving in the right direction. As for motion aid, it's worth mentioning that I'm playing this title using a Quest 3 as a PC VR headset. That may be the reason I experienced problems, seeing as the game appears to have presets for different headsets like the Quest 2 and the Valve Index. The game does include motion aids, but I ran into significant issues right off the bat. Interacting with motion aids was basically impossible for me due to a menu bug. This bug was significant enough to affect all menu interaction, which was unfortunate. Being an early access title in beta though, these problems are expected. I was able to set my height when I first launched the game, but that came with its own set of problems. For instance, when crouching to pick up something, my body would obstruct my view or oddly interact with the environment. This issue detracts from the immersive experience that VR is known for. Ultimately, motion aids walks away with a 1 out of 6. While the intention of including motion aid is noted, the execution leaves much to be desired. This is one aspect I'd like to see improved for the full release, along with visual quality. There's no nice way to put this one. The visual quality of the game is low at best. It's definitely not the worst I've ever seen, but it's pretty close to the bottom of the list. The graphical fidelity lacks the polish and clarity that we've come to expect in modern VR titles, but that's okay for a beta. Polish is usually the last thing to developers should focus on before release. One upside to this category is the guns having a better aesthetic. They showcase a higher visual quality compared to other elements with more detailed textures and realistic designs. Unfortunately, this quality doesn't extend to most other aspects of the game, leading to a disjointed visual experience. Low graphics aren't the biggest problem until they start interfering with world space interaction. Opening up supply containers in the game is problematic because of their low resolution. It's often unclear which side they open from, and when it is, the act of opening them feels frustrating. This inconsistency affects the visual appeal, causing players to struggle with what should be relatively straightforward. Visual quality unfortunately gets a 2 out of 6. While it has its moments, particularly with the guns, the overall visual quality is underwhelming. From UI design issues to inconsistent graphics, there's significant room for improvement here, especially since visual quality is a large part of a player's experience. Audio quality is too, and it definitely performs better than the visuals here. One of the best standout features in the audio department is the gun sounds. The guns and sound features related to them are probably the overall best feature of this game in its current state. The effects are pretty impressive, adding a layer of realism and excitement to the gameplay. Whether you're reloading or cocking a weapon, the sound contributes significantly to that cool factor, enhancing the overall combat experience. The sound here is well integrated into the mechanics too. For instance, when you're thirsty, your character begins to cough. I feel like this is a clever integration, more so in VR than on a flat screen title. There were moments during my playthrough when I mistook these cues, especially the cough, for another player nearby, which was a little unnerving. And on the topic of unnerving, the footsteps. Footsteps are quite loud in this game, especially your own, and give away your position almost a little too easily in my opinion. I noticed that the footsteps volume didn't change much, if at all, when crouching, which was a little bit of an unexpected letdown. This lack of variation can limit tactical options for players who prefer a stealthier approach. Overall though, the audio is pretty good. 4 out of 6. The sounds come through clean, they improve immersion for the most part, and nothing I've heard ever felt out of place. With all that said, the whole package surprisingly came out to more than just the sum of its parts. The original score was going to be 2.5 out of 6, which wouldn't have been out of place for an early access title. The reviews on this channel focus on reviewing the current state of a game on an even playing field. I want to emphasize that this game is not yet complete and is in beta, so a low score would not be abnormal here. With that said, Ghosts of Tabor is a game with a strong foundation. This title has earned a revised score of 3 out of 6. As it stands, it offers a glimpse into a potentially more refined and immersive VR experience in its full release. The developers evidently have a lot planned for this game, and I look forward to revisiting this title for review when it hits full release status. With that said, new reviews drop weekly, so don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. As this channel's review roster grows, I hope to continue increasing the quality of these videos. If you like immersive survival experiences, click the link in the description for our Into the Radius review, and until next time, stay immersed.